I'm going to turn the time over to Peter to just quickly introduce the sequence and different projects that will be shared. So, Peter.
All right. Okay, so who here doesn't know what the studio projects are about? All right, so I think everybody's, because this is the second semester this year, everyone kind of knows already. So what we're going to do this time is a little bit different. We're going to have the 760 group will present theirs up here, talk about the process a little bit that we've gone through this semester, and then our 560 group are set up around the room. So we'll get up after we hear from Karen and Dave and go and look around a little bit. And I was just realizing right now that in my zeal to get programs up and working this morning, I forgot to print off the feedback forms. So if you've got feedback from people, give them feedback. Everybody's worked on projects that they care about, or at least they did for a good portion of the semester. I don't know how that will be tomorrow, but so give them constructive feedback on, hey, how this might be useful, what I like about it. Just a real sort of quick feel. We'll start over here. We'll start with, which end should we start with? Brian. Really quickly, as we go around the room, where would you put your programming skills prior to beginning this class, scale 1 to 10?
Holistically, hovering around a 1.5, 1.6.
Right. Wait, what languages or
So it's really
scripting
strong
did
in
you feel?
ActionScript, relatively strong in ActionScript, and basically none in any of the languages that I listed on the board.
Okay. All right. Now we'll go on to Grant.
I'm a web designer professionally, so I work in JavaScript and HTML and CSS every day. But I've worked with WordPress before, and I wanted to build a WordPress plugin, so I extended my WordPress API as well as PHP knowledge for this class.
Before this class, I was about a 2. I remember in 5th grade, our computer teacher taught us the basics of HTML. That was where I stopped, right there. I was in 5th grade. So yeah, about a 2. And it's been an interesting class.
I was probably at a -1. I struggled through programming in SPSS and SATA in my undergraduate and didn't learn anything and came out with a really bad attitude about programming. So I started at a very low place.
I once made a low-resolution image on an Apple IIe, and then took a really basic HTML class that I had forgotten before I started this one. So I was pretty low on the scale as well.
All right, and then we'll go around. You can see what they've done this semester. Everybody's kind of worked on their projects. I'm going to turn it over to Karen now. She talks about where we are with, or where we went in the 760 class.
Okay, so like all of you in 560, I knew nothing, really. But I have learned a lot more. But my knowledge does not, I've learned a whole lot more about Corona and about Lua, but I learned a lot more about the realm of group coding in this class than anything else. So, the lessons that I learned were the importance of syncing. So we used a program called GitHub, which is where you store all of the code so that more than one person can go snatch a piece of it and change it and put it back. But it's very important, and he told us this at the first day, it's very important to sync every day so that you're not writing over what somebody did the day before. And we were really quite good at that until yesterday. But for me, the more important thing about syncing was to make sure that I understood and that Peter understood that we were going in the same direction. So we really needed to sync what our thoughts were so that we went correctly together toward that same target instead of off in different directions. And I'm sure it would be even more important if there were more than 2 in your group. I learned how to go through someone else's code, which is quite possibly the hardest thing ever. So a different group of people started Cookie Factory. Last year, maybe? Yeah. And I was tasked with going through one of their files and changing a bit of it and making it work. And she was very good about writing, putting in why she was putting in what she coded, but it still was very difficult for me to figure out why it was working that way and why it needed to be there. I learned the importance of actually naming things really long names so that you know exactly what it is instead of text. That doesn't help. You know what I mean? It needed to be more specific, and I learned about that a lot this time. Let's see. I learned about dealing with software updates. So Corona is the development kit that we used. It is based off of Lua, and it's really quite a great development kit, but they just released a new version, 2 weeks ago, Peter?
Yes.
We found it
New
last
public
night.
version 2 weeks ago.
And it's updated things like, well, throughout the semester, they've updated things like you don't use single images anymore. You put them on a sheet with all the versions of your image, and then you tell the computer where to go find that piece. And it uses less memory, which is great, makes your computer or your program run faster, but that all those things had to be updated from what they were before. The one that he found last night was, it's called a widget, and if you want a button in your app, you can use one of their libraries. It's a whole button library for everything that they've created for the button, which was great, and we were using that, but they updated it 2 weeks ago, and so when he updated last night, all of a sudden it broke. And then we had to go in and fix it, and by we, I mean he. So, let's see, the other one that I took care of today was you used to have to tell it whether you wanted it to use Retina text for a Retina device. And in the newest upgrade, they decided to make it smart enough to know whether it needed to do Retina, so you had to go in and take all of that out, which is what I did this one. So, mostly I relearned that I actually can do this, because in 560 I really didn't think I could, and it turned out that I could. And at the beginning of this semester I didn't really think that I could, but turns out I could. I got really frustrated when I got bogged down. It turns out I'm the kind of person that likes to be able to run at lightning speed all the time. And that's not how coding is, and so I would have moments of severe frustration. But then those spurts of success where it feels like you're like running as fast as you can, those are the moments that you have to live off of when you're coding. So now, the app. So the objectives that I was given at the beginning were to add in the links to the Common Core standards for math. Cookie Factory is a math game. And to make the delivery quiz screen function, which was this took me about 2 seconds because I learned everything I needed to know in 560 for how to do that. But it made me feel good. And then I had to struggle through the rest of the semester on the second one. So, I'm going to show you on my screen up here. And then I also have it on this iPad, so when you go around you can come play it if you want. So, Peter's screen, and the screen that he worked on the most this semester. Do you want me to show you this? Yeah. So we have our instructions. Welcome to our factory. We need help packaging cookies for delivery. You have to combine the cookies into the right amount. This app is to help kids learn, master, kind of understand place value in the 2nd through the 4th grade. Then after combining them, then you drag them down into the little bin that it's missing, and then they'll be packaged and ready for shipping. So, your number comes right here on the bottom, 25,213. So how many hundreds do you need? Anybody? 2. Very good. So then you have to watch for the hundreds to come along. There's one. You grab it and bring it down. And you have to wait for the next one to come along, unless you know the recording get around that Peter created.
Can you not?
Should I just do that?
You can pick
Want me to
one
do
up,
Oh, hey, there's one.
you can double click on them and then multiply by 10.
Put them together, so that's 200, and drop it down in here. Yay, there's your next question. So how many do I need in the ones column for that number? 2 again, very good. So this is the packaging screen. It's great. If you try to put the wrong one in here, it will bounce back out. Is this just for you, or are the kids going to be able to do that too?
You can do 2.
If you double click on it, it bounces into the next place value, which means you don't have to wait forever to get that many cookies. So, okay. Oh, hey, and you can drag it everywhere. Core standards is the first thing that I did. So I went in and got the wording from the actual core standards online, but then we only used, if you understand standards, there's like a really top level statement, and then a even more detailed statement, and then a whole lot of detail. And we didn't want to add all of that in here, but we did want this in here so that parents know that it actually serves a purpose, so that teachers can have their kids working on this, and parents aren't like, what are you doing? They're actually working on their math. So it actually links to the internet, to the site, so that they can go find out what their kids are learning and why they're learning it. And then finally, oh, that's the wrong one. Loading dock. This is the screen that I worked on. So in this one, we're trying to fill our orders, but each one of the trucks that you see are not quite ready. So you have to figure out which truck, which missing place value your cookie fits into, and drop it into the truck. So this says 50. So which truck do we need? Which truck needs something in the tens place? The middle one. It's not one. Which one needs 50? The middle one. Very good. So you take it and drop it in here, and the truck drives away, and 3 more pop up. And it turned green because it was right. And eventually there will be a counter on here because this is a quiz screen. So it will keep track of how many you got right and how many you got wrong. So if I drag this one in here, it's red. But it still drives away because you got it wrong. And the next question comes up. Okay? You guys have any questions? Oh, right. There's also sound through the whole thing.
Turn off the background music.
What?
There you go, now you can hear the trucks if you want.
Oh yeah, the trucks are playing. Can you hear the trucks running?
Beautiful.
That was awesome. That's it. Okay. Ta-da.
So is there not a screen right now for like looking at how someone did overall?
Not right now. That will come in soon. I believe. Right, Peter?
Yes.
Hello. One of you lovely folks will do that. One of these guys. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so last semester in the 560 course, started working on some opportunities to be able to gather some analytics with looking at video lectures. And so for this semester in 760, I kind of went ahead and extended that. But what I did to start off with this semester was, last semester I found I was having kind of a harder time understanding how to integrate front-end functionality with the website and the back-end database. And so I went ahead and kind of started off developing a little project to be able to keep track of projects for my department. And it ended up springboarding into quite a bit. So I'll show that real quick and then show what I spent most of the semester working on. So I created this dashboard for my department that's it's kind of like a Google Doc where they can come in, they can type things, it saves it automatically, and they're able to sort by different things. And so my director's using this a lot to be able to keep track of different projects. So you're able to come and see projects for individual managers, see all of them. The name of the project turns red if the project hasn't been updated in the last 5 days. And there's a couple other pieces of functionality. But the major reason I worked on this is because this forced me to work through the situations in which you do something on the front end of your web page and you need to get it back into the database and then back out again to the front end. And so as you saw, that's all happening asynchronously without having to refresh the page or anything, so using some jQuery and Ajax technologies. So that ended up being really helpful because what I spent most of the semester on was this demo version of a video lecture product I've been putting together. So I'll go ahead and show that. So what happens here is this is a recorded video lecture I found on YouTube, so ignore the video quality, it's not very great, but it's some Stanford professor teaching about the general theory of relativity. And so I'll kind of just let this go and talk about some things as they happen.
Okay, let's begin with Newton's equations. The first equation, of course, is F equals ma. Force is equal to mass times acceleration. Let's assume that we have a frame of
Okay, so you'll notice right here that as the instructor has been mentioning, I now have this frame of reference topic come up. So over here you can click on this, and it comes up with an explanation. and you're able to view some alternates. So if you're listening and watching the video and realizing that it's just not making sense for what he's describing, you can come here and get some alternate help, and you can go ahead. Oh, that's interesting. So right before this, I tried to push this to my web server to be able to show this off, and I broke stuff at like 11 o'clock. And I thought I fixed it, I didn't. So in theory, on that one, you're able to click the stars and it tracks it. But so anyway, so if you have a computer, why don't you go ahead and for like 2 minutes, hop on daverackham.com/demo, and just kind of, you can skip through the video, come up with different resources, click on them, and then you'll kind of see where the whole core of the idea is. And so basically what I'm trying to do is provide an opportunity for people to get just-in-time help in a video lecture online with topics that might be confusing. So if you don't have a computer, maybe you can huddle around somebody that kind of does, so you can see.
How do you spell it?
Dave Rackham, R-A-C-K-H-A-M.
So I've got the URL up here on the screen.
What are we testing on, Dave?
So just take a look at it.
Push
So
forward.
just play the video for a minute or two, just kind of click on some of the resources that pop up.
Does it matter what browser you're on?
Yeah, you can work down.
Does it matter what browser you're on?
It shouldn't. What browser are you
So,
using?
so in Firefox, nothing's popping up.
Yeah, we're using
But in
Firefox.
Chrome,
I
something's
think what
popping up.
happened, check your, is your next connection good still?
I can watch the video.
But nothing's
Well,
coming
if it
up.
would have loaded before.
Why don't you try Chrome and see if you have it, or Safari? And that's interesting. Firefox has been my nemesis. With the dashboard that I made for work, Firefox didn't like any of it. So I ended up putting up a screen that said, if you're using Firefox, it just pulled up a blank page and said, use something else, because I'm not supporting Firefox right now. So, but anyway, so for those of you that can't see, so for instance, right here, he makes a statement. Let me see if I can find the exact.
Yeah, it works.
It works on that,
Chrome.
okay. So listen to this, this is really interesting.
Summarized by F equals
So like the next 5 seconds, he makes an assumption about what the learners know.
acceleration. This is a vector equation. I expect people know what a vector is.
Okay, so this is a great example of what I'm trying to solve. Is here's a professor with a recorded video lecture that could be used by a wide variety of people, and maybe his intended audience in the classroom at Stanford, you could assume that they all knew what a vector was. But if this is now up on YouTube and I'm watching it for whatever reason, because I'm interested in general theory of relativity, all of a sudden I may not know what a vector is, and he's making this assumption. So I'm now able to go over here, I'm able to read this explanation, and then if this isn't sufficient, I have a link out to a different website, which may or may not load depending on the internet right now. And so I found a resource online that had some existing information about vectors that might be helpful. So that's kind of the idea that you can get, but the other piece behind all of this is all of these events I'm tracking, and I'm able to gather information about when they pause, if they seek in the video, what resources they click on, how many stars they rated it. I'm able to track if I'm watching it, but I'm doing one of
Vector
these.
equation. We'll come later to four vectors, where with space and time.
So I'm listening to the video, but I'm actually not paying
space-time.
attention
But for
on
the
the video
moment, space-
necessarily. I can track all of that, and I'll go ahead and show that real quick. So this is the database I'm using, and you can see, I can gather information about when a certain user on which video they started the seeking process, stopped. I can see when they paused. All those different things. And so that was one of the big key pieces I'm trying to build into this as well, are these analytics. And the reason being, if I'm trying to deliver excellent content to students via an online video lecture format, I would like to be able to know what they're doing with it. And, do we know anything for sure what it means if the user's pausing the video a ton? I don't know if we know for sure just from that information. But it's a way to be able to start looking at aspects about the quality of the video and have some good launching points for inquiry about these events that are occurring. And so there's kind of some dual purposes in this system. Help the user have a better experience with this by being able to provide resources to them just in time, and then also help provide better information for the people creating the content to be able to over time improve these videos that they're producing. So that's kind of the crux of it for right now. I'll stick around. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. I've been working on this now for a couple months and pretty excited about it. I'm going to keep working on it. So if you have feedback, thoughts, ideas, I'd love to hear it. Come talk to me. And that's what I worked on this semester.
so people are set up around the room. Go ahead and walk around, look at their projects, ask them questions, throw their computers against the wall. No. Grant.
Do you have the sheets or they?
Yeah, and that's what I said at the beginning. I was a little overzealous in trying to get some of these programs working, and I totally forgot to bring any sheets up here.
Oh,
So
okay.
people are going to have to give you spoken feedback as they go through this. I apologize.
All right, so this is the Unification of Brian project.
Right.
All right, do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about your project just for a few minutes?
Yeah, you bet. So the instructional dilemma I was trying to go for here was take all of the various social media sites that exist online and are disconnected and connect them using one homepage. I learned so many things throughout this course, one of which is trying to buy a domain name. I was like having this big old battle with the guy who has briantanner.com. And so I learned about all the different various variations on different domain names and things that I could buy. In addition, I had like zero development experience in terms of CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, stuff like that. And Peter, he supported me in my goals to learn these new languages, and so he pointed me towards some resources like codecademy.com and a few textbooks that were geared towards my style of learning. And he encouraged me to just go through that and then go to my website and apply some of the things that I've been learning, whether or not it really related to my outcomes that I intended for my website. And so it was a compromise. This final product has some weird little elements to it that just express some of the learning that I learned along the way, but I'm grateful for it.
Just out of curiosity, were you able to get that domain name that you?
No! Gosh, it was terrible. Like, I was emailing this guy for like 3 months, and I was pretty sure he wasn't going to re-up his subscription to GoDaddy, and then like an hour before it was up for grabs, he paid him again. So I don't think he's letting go of it. I'm gonna have to come up with something else.
Yeah. Okay.
But just one little illustration here is to just look at some of this code that I've written. Like, I didn't know how to do any of this. Anything related to structuring using HTML. In the CSS here, this creates the styles of how things appear and gives it attributes, how it looks. And then JavaScript and jQuery give action. jQuery is just a library or a framework for JavaScript. So it's basically shortcuts that lets you do awesome things with a little bit of code. So comparatively, this is just like a little bit, right?
Right.
But it actually does. It does all of the actions on my site.
And you're able to integrate all of these different codes and have them work together.
Yep. They're all independent pages. Some are .html files, some are .js files, some are .css files. But you just link them all to your index.html page, and they all work together. And you just host them on a website. These are all things that you can learn in this class. It's very, very cool. I had a very cursory understanding of how things worked, but now that I've actually had to pay money for a website and make the pages and put them all on, it's been an amazing experience, and I think it's going to serve me well in my future career.
Great.
So I recommend the class.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say?
Oh no! Check out. I don't have the domain name yet, but
this is what you're going for.
Yeah, maybe in 5 years I'll finally get briantanner.com.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm calling it a technology mapping job aid. I'm thinking I might change it to teaching with technology job aid. The idea is it's a way to help teachers make a lesson plan or a unit plan. So the idea behind the technology mapping is you have your topic for the lesson or the unit, you pick the learning activities to teach that topic, then you pick the technologies that are going to support those activities in teaching the topic. So in the paper version of the curriculum, you just throw them all out there. In this one, if you would, let's do it. You can pick your subject area in the drop down here. whichever you're going to be teaching. Okay. So here, this is the topic row. You go through and whichever topic you want to teach them, you just drag it over into the plan area. Then you got a bunch of activities here that you can choose from that you would use in teaching that topic. And you can just pick whichever one you want. You can do 1 or 2 or 3, whatever. It's loose on purpose because it's like a paper version of the card game. And then the technologies that you could use in teaching.
Has this been
math.
dynamically changing as I move this in and out?
It hasn't been, and that's a feature improvement for next next version of the thing. There are websites like that, but we wanted to keep it just kind of simple like the card game because we might not think of all the right combinations ourselves. Right. And if you don't know what the technologies are, you can click on it. Oh, one more time. There you go. Online math games, that's pretty basic. There's a link there.
Star math games.
Yeah.
But right now it's
Anyway, and so, yeah, we were going to do these links for like all the cards, but we realized if you don't know what like fractions are or recognizing a pattern, those are pedagogical things that they would already know. It's the technology integration part that they'd want help with, bubble S for concept mapping, mind mapping, and things like that. Anyway, so the idea is you make your little lesson plan, and then you can either print it out to have in hand when you're in the classroom getting it done, or to have in hand to show your evaluator, your administrator, or you could just take a picture of it and send it to your teacher for a grade, because I use this in 334.
So I just printed this. I want to see what it looks like. So I'm going to get tier downloads. All right.
Cool.
Downloads are so clean. All right. So it just prints out just like that.
Yeah.
So is this considered a lesson plan? Looks kind of like I don't know. And I'm not a big lesson plan developer, but it seems like there's no flow of what's happening when.
Yeah, I thought about when it's maybe lesson plan isn't the right word for it. Maybe it's like not resource selector, but because it doesn't drill down and say do this, then now change over to this center or whatever. This is just like the very basic rudiments of we're going to use this resource in this basic way, and there's room on the paper to write in the details, basically. So again, like the version of the card game where it's put some primary components in place, and then you still have to be a thoughtful teacher and decide how to do it yourself. That's why we call it a job aid instead of a job doing it for you.
Yeah, it's really just to get them to think about options. It's not really showing them how to do it or tie it together.
Right. Well, and I thought about doing like arrows, to try to show that alignment maybe, and we might still do that, but...
What might be nice if there was a second stage is maybe they complete this and then there's a next button where then they go through and add that logic into all of this.
No, that would be
so you talked about fractions and click here to select the standard that would go with the fraction, activity, and then where we had selected create and recognize patterns as the activity, maybe it's the activity would be like organization, I don't know, how you would organize the students, how you would assess them.
Right, centers or whole class or what.
Exactly. So that then they could go through and fill in the things and actually create maybe a full-on lesson plan.
Yeah, that's true.
That might be good.
Yeah, we had ideas at first of like you submit your completed lesson plan to a database, lesson plans get voted up or voted down and have to share, and that would be cool. But that's definitely larger scope.
Yeah. And if you added more of that kind of logic, that would, I think, then allow you to do that. Because right now, you wouldn't really vote on something like this. But if someone went through and did the work to say, here's how I'm going to use Khan Academy to create and recognize patterns, here's what I'm planning to do, yada, yada, yada.
Well, you need those details you mentioned.
Yeah,
really
then someone
get a good
could
look.
start to vote up and down and that kind of stuff. So.
Cool. Thank you for that feedback. That's useful stuff.
Good stuff. Good job. You call people that
Hi, my name is Christian Spring, and I made an ebook
in building the kingdom, but you don't have like any
with some already created curriculum about career readiness for different native populations of Yakuza. So eventually, the books have been created for Hawaiians and Samoans and Tongans and Navajo students.
They're not doing
And so eventually, a student will be able to select whichever book they want, and every student in the class will be able to go through their own cultural book at the same pace as every other student. So the Hawaiian students and the Navajo students will be learning the same things, but with different stories and their words translated into their own languages that they speak. So they'll be able to connect with their culture while getting ready for the college and their careers. So this welcome screen kind of shows you what the book does and what you can click on. And then you navigate through the book like a regular app. The table of contents allows you to navigate to any of the
obviously the biggest
pages,
issue is you
and
can't see
then
the
if you
words
click
that
back
you
up here,
match,
it'll
but they
take
are
you back
there
to the
and you
table
can
of
hear them.
contents. And then the title page and several other pages have these conch shells. So if you don't speak the language or want to work on your pronunciation, then you can click on the conch shell and it'll read it to you. Usually you can hear, but it's loud in here.
Right here.
And then, especially for longer things, you can turn the sound off with this crossed out conch shell if you get tired of listening. Reading is often, reading aloud is slower than reading to yourself. So.
Then you check the answers and again you
These are the
get the word
values
based
and
on
same
them.
kind of thing with
Dead
the
finish
conch
for sure,
shells.
correct. You can reset and try again.
And then there's several other pages like that where you
Just
learn different things.
just a place.
These icons kind of signpost what is available in the book, and you can just go through in order, which is probably what most people will do. But you can also click on the icons, and then it'll take you to the page that the icon is explained on. And if you click on the icon, you can go back, and if you've forgotten what your icon is about or whatever, you can go
There you
back.
have it. And the intent of this is just to be a prototype.
There's this story, and the story is the most exciting, probably hearing part of the story is read to you with a little conch shell. And eventually we're hoping to have it animated with little sprite things so that people can watch the story going through. I know. So that'll be fun.
They have it. Questions?
And then this is just, different career readiness skills that you can learn in the book. And then when you get to the activity,
The trouble was
this activity is
what I
about
needed to know in
having
order to start
different
the
values, different things, different strengths that any individual might have. So if you happen to not know what a word is, you can click on it, and then its definition will show up. Because we figured it's a little bit embarrassing sometimes for students to have to ask their teachers what words mean. So we wanted to make it easy. And then for the writing assignments, you can type in the boxes. Very cool. And then submit your assignment to an external site so your teacher can grade it, and so that you can access it after your class is over, because you probably won't have this iPad forever.
It's been exciting to work on.
And then this is another writing assignment, and then at the end, you get to listen to this cool reggae song, and when you get tired of it, you can stop it with the conch shell.
Yeah, I do.
Thanks.